Hello, everyone. How are you doing? It's Brinley Tucker and Monica Reynolds. We are so excited to get started today. Today, we are starting our path to the Director of Operations. And I am so excited to have my partner, Monica Reynolds, on the call. Monica, you want to say hello?
Hello, everyone. So here's a couple of things. So first of all, sorry that call number 13 got uploaded a little late. That won't happen again. That was just a little glitch. Sorry about that. And here's the good news. This call today is pretty exciting. It's the beginning of the first 6 calls. And so we're going to go through a couple of things and talk about what to expect, but also this call is super important. And if you are a director of operations, it's going to give you some great insights. If you're not a director of operations and you're looking at it, you're going to get some great insights of how to grow to this job. So, Brinley, let's go ahead and get started because we got a lot to cover today.
Absolutely. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Here's what as Monica said, we are beginning the first the first of 6 weeks of talking about the Director of Operations role. Now, this is so exciting because we have so much that we are going to cover in the next 6 weeks. So number one, what you can expect is you can expect a full job description for the Director of Operations. So we're going to tell you exactly what does this role look like? What do they do? Now, we're going to give you a template of this, and then we're going to talk about what we see on some teams based on the other roles that you have in your operations department. We're going to take you through a 30, 60, 90 for a Director of Operations. So whether you're hiring from within the team or you're hiring from outside organization, what's the 30, 60, 90 that you're going to put that individual through when they go into this new role? We're going to go over the 4 conversations of recruiting. A lot of our directors of operations, if not the majority of them, are doing some type of career visioning, whether it be for agents for the team or for admin staff for their operations team. So we're going to talk about the 4 conversations and accountability that you can have around the recruiting process. We're going to discuss the pros and cons of having this person licensed versus unlicensed. So what it looks like when they are licensed and then what it could look like if they're not licensed. And we're also going to talk about team onboarding, the operations side of team onboarding. A lot of times we say onboarding in a very general, wide variety and very broad way, when onboarding truly is bringing someone onto the team. And sometimes we confuse onboarding with training. So we're going to get really dialed in on what onboarding looks like, whether you're onboarding an experienced agent or you're onboarding a brand new agent. Monica, you want to tell them what the next 5 are?
Yeah, and so just going back on number 6 on agent onboarding. So many times in the old days it was, here's and thanks for joining our team. Go ahead, start calling people, get started. Here's some just listed just sold. Go for it. And yet think about this. When you have a very distinct onboarding process, you're setting that agent up for success. But more importantly, every single minute of those first few days, it's like a honeymoon. Did I do the right thing? Do I do the right thing? Did I do the right thing? And with organization and with a great onboarding process, so they're not wondering, well, when am I going to get a password for that? Well, who's going to show me how to do this? And who's going to show me Boomtown? It's all of that very in sync with a very nice schedule with everything compiled for them. Remember, this starts a relationship. The more organized, the more thorough you are, the more you take time to explain this and to be organized and show them that you're excited to have them on the team. That's such a critical thing. And then, of course, on number 7, when you're terminating a team member, whether it's an agent or an admin employee, there are very strong strategies when you're terminating someone. There's an exit interview, and sometimes in the termination, you've got to be very clear with your documentation, depending on each state when they're an employee. And, we're going to go, we don't know all the state laws about unemployment, but we're going to go through some guidelines and some things like that. And, of course, number 8, the P&L, we're going to talk about above the line and below the line. And should you, the Director of Operations, be aware of the P&L and we're not asking to produce a P&L, but you should make sure that the numbers get to the person who's doing the P&L. Make sure you understand the P&L. And, of course, your job is how do you make that P&L look better? What costs can you eliminate? Are you staying within the percentages and the guidelines of the economic model? And then, of course, we're going to talk about leadership because you are a leader. And we're going to go through some really strong leadership skills, some ways to become a great leader. And, of course, obviously, really talking about some of the programs that you should have on your radar to attend on a yearly basis. You've got to grow. You can't stay in the office all the time. You're a director of operations. You need to have the big picture. And then the last call we're going to have is going to be an interview. And we know we got a lot of emails and comments on the interview last week with Marianne. We've got a top director of operations who came up through the ranks and has a great story, and you will really enjoy listening to this director of operations. So that's what the next 6 calls are going to be like. So, Brinley, let's go to the next one, all right? So now we're going to talk about a couple of things here on the next one. All right, and it's the ideal profile. Oh, boy. Okay. So on the ideal profile on your handout, you're going to see that there are 16 things. Now, some of you are going to go, oh my gosh, how does somebody do this? We're looking at teams that, and Brinley and I talked about this the other night. We talk almost every night working on that. And we talked about, you know, a director of operations. I had a call, and Brinley agrees with this, and this person had one assistant, and they were looking to hire a director of operations. And they're doing about 75 transactions, and they go, that's not a director of operations. So you got to follow the model. And so you're looking at 150 plus transactions. You've got 2 assistants in place, and you're growing to the next level. You follow the model. You've got a couple buyer agents, a showing an agent assistant. You've got those things in place, and that's when the director of operations comes in. So don't glaze over this. It's not a wish list. It's really what the profile of a director of operations. These are the things that you should be able to do. You don't learn how to do this in one day. You don't learn how to do it in 3 months. This is ultimately where you get to in the 9 months to 1 year, absolutely. So you're going to oversee all admin and transactions. What does that mean? You own the seat too. So if somebody's gone, you can jump in that seat. A lot of agents that I've coached over the past have hired someone to become a operator. They had business skills and leadership, but they didn't have any real estate experience. It's a disaster because they really can't train the new TC. They can't train a listing manager. They don't own the job. Number 2, hire and train the admin team. Number 3, hire and train buyer agents until there's a director of sales or a sales manager is hired. And so you're not, in some cases, the agent obviously will help with the training also, but there's certain things that you can help that buyer agent with that you bring on board. Number 4, you're in charge of the P&L and financials. Like I said, not putting all the numbers together. You're not creating the P&L in most cases. However, you are in charge of making sure that on the 15th of the month, there's a P&L from the previous month, and the Rainmaker and you over each line by line. That's called creating a business. Number 5, offboard all team members with exit interviews and protocols followed. You know the laws. If they're employees, you know how to keep the employee file. You're compliant. When you're offboarding, you know exactly what needs to be signed and how that needs to be done. True story today. An agent told me that they offboarded a buyer agent and a week ago, and they forgot to take the password out for the buyer agent. How do you forget this? The buyer agent downloaded the database. They could tell he downloaded it. And he says, well, I'm only going to take people that I know. And they said, well, you took the whole database. Well, I'm not going to use those. How do you know? And so crazy stuff happens out there. 6, proficient on Kelly and Command. We're going to go through that, and Brinley's got a really good handle on that. I've got a great handle on the Kelly part too. So number 7, facilitates and organizes all team meetings and team events. So your business planning meeting this time of year in October should be done per Gary Keller, per every coach out there in MAPS, and Brinley and I. And you should be organizing that. You should have the agenda. You should have the times. You should have it all organized as far as the food and the vendors who's going to donate those things. Number 8, conducts daily huddle with admin. Every day there's a daily huddle with admin. Number 9, keeps all numbers in real time and update daily. You are in charge of the numbers. You're the number monster. You know exactly who's on first base, how many listing appointments have been gone on, sources of business, all that's all in you have other people helping you, but you're compiling those numbers. Number 10, meet with the Rainmaker, the CEO daily. You should have a daily meeting. You're running a big business. You're growing a big business. And number 11, you're in charge of the growth of the database. Number 1 asset. Number 1 asset of the business, and every single month you need to know how many completes you have, name, address, phone number, and emails. Gary Keller's Top 100 group, he says a minimum of 3 new people should be put in your database every single day. There are people in Gary's mastermind that have seriously over 100,000 people in their database. Now you're going to say, well, they don't know them. You're right, they don't know them, but they have name recognition and they know of that agent. So building that database is absolutely critical, and you have to be in charge, and they have to be complete: name, address, phone number, and emails. And then 12, you're in charge of the employee file, vacation days, sick days. Somebody's got to be in charge of that. That should all be under lock and key also, especially when you do a corrective conversation. And most of you know how to do that from the previous Perfect Real Estate Assistant class. Number 13, what's the ROI on all the outgoing expenses of the team? Are you getting at least a 3 to 4 return on it? You know, if you're not, you're breaking even, why do you have that expense? If you're not getting any return, why do you have that expense? And then number 14, you're in charge of the 90-day reviews. Now, hopefully as I go through this list, nobody's going, I quit. No, don't do that. These are all manageable. Remember, you're leveraging a lot of these things out, and then some of the things you directly are responsible for. So that 90-day review, you're directly responsible for that. And we'll go through a little bit of that. Also with number 15, the 411 of agents and admin, you're going to do the reviews and the collecting of that. You know, we're going to empower you to be a great leader, and you're in charge of those things. And last but not least is 16 is the policy and procedures manual with quarterly updates. That is the critical. That's your book of business. That's your roadmap to success. You're not reinventing the wheel all the time. Everything needs to be documented. Now, it doesn't have to be in a binder. Of course, it can be digital, and we've seen a lot of great Google applications that everybody has done, and so on their Google Drives. And I just saw one the other day from a big expansion team, and it's awesome. It's awesome. Okay, Ms. Brindley, so that's the profile. So I hope everybody is okay. They fastened their seatbelts. So let's go to the job description, shall we? Brindley? Hello?
Hey guys, sorry about that. I had myself muted so I wouldn't interrupt Monica. So anytime we talk about a job description in our Keller Williams ecosystem, it has 5 categories that we always want to make sure that we're paying attention to. Those 5 categories, again, are key success metrics, primary objectives, regular work activities, key skills, people, contacts, and interaction. So the first one is your key success metrics. What are the key minimum success standards that must be met for the performance to be considered acceptable? So for your director of operations, this is the person that's going to build, implement, manage all systems for everything operations. You guys have heard me say it from stage with Gary and Jay. You can't be a director of operations if you don't have operations to direct. So you're going to be building and implementing and managing the systems for all of those operations, everything that's operational within the real estate team. This is going to be everything from transaction coordination, internal communication, client communication, financial management, information management, central database, your marketing, anything and everything. I was on a call yesterday with a phenomenal DOO, and he said, my rainmaker came to me and said, we want to increase our conversion rate and increase prospecting activities. Well, what do I have to do with that? That's the director of sales' position. Well, what systems can you build to help the director of sales increase the agent's conversion and increase the prospecting activities? Always thinking, how can I support from a system standpoint? You're also going to assist in, as needed, in documenting these systems for all other departments. So playbooks are huge right now. We don't have operations manuals anymore. Operations manuals got too big and too deep. We have playbooks now. This is how you run the play, just like in football. So we have a playbook for events, so that if somebody new comes on the team, we hand them the playbook and we say, here, go execute the play. This is how you execute an event on our team. Or if we do open houses, and that's one of our lead gen levers, great, here's your open house playbook. Go execute an open house. So do you have everything documented in such a way that a new member can come into the team tomorrow and you can easily lead them on how to execute? They're responsible for all the financial systems, including and maintaining the books, paying the bills, handling payroll, collecting commissions, making sure that commissions are correct, maintaining the budget, and generating all of your financial reports. So your balance sheets, your P&L, which is your profit and loss. If you're on this call right now and your team doesn't have a P&L, this might sting a little bit, Monica. You're not running a business. You can't be running a business if you don't know what your profit and loss looks like. If you're not tracking your expenses, tracking your revenue, and knowing what your profit or loss is, you truly don't have a true business. And we're going to talk about that later in the call, in the calls on how to create that. You oversee all contracts to close. Notice that does not say that you do contract to close. Contract and close is done by your transaction coordinator, yet you are ultimately responsible, so you're overseeing it. You're going to create and maintain an operations manual that documents all the systems and standards. We talked about that with the playbooks. You're also going to coordinate any office equipment, and you're responsible for hiring, training, consulting, and holding accountable all the administrative department members. So those are what you're held, what standards the director of operations should be held to. What are the primary objectives of this role? These are the major objectives or outcomes to be accomplished by the person in the job. So on page 6, we see you're the key empire protector for the growing expansion empire. Now, it says expansion, and people don't necessarily realize this. If we follow Gary's new MREA 2 models, which we're going to show you in the next call, the director of operations doesn't really come into play until level 5, which is when we start building for expansion, because the director of operations is running the hub, so to speak, or all of the operations to start building the expansion empire. And expansion doesn't necessarily mean another state. Expansion can mean the next city over or the next location within the state. You master your systems. You consistently seek new, innovative, and efficient business processes that save time and money. You're the key leader of the expansion hub. You increase the ability of the hub to process transactions, freeing up your expansion partners to focus more on generating transactions. You are going to build and implement the systems. You're going to exhibit a drive to use systems. We're hearing a common theme here. Systems are the lifeblood of the director of operations. If you're deeply committed to supporting the growth of the expansion agent and the expansion director, that might be called something different in your organization. That is the expansion business owner, as we now refer to them, and the expansion partner. You're responsible for hiring, leading all department members to ensure administrative tasks of the lead agent's business continues to be completed to high standards with maximum efficiency. I want you guys to write that down. High standards with maximum efficiency. That is the vision of a director of operations right there. Wouldn't you say, Monica? Isn't that awesome? So powerful.
Absolutely. That's a great one. I wrote that down too.
Yes. So now we want to know, okay, what are your regular work activities? What are the most frequent and essential jobs that you're going to be doing in this role? So your regular work activities outlined on page 7 are obviously, again, system development, implementation, documentation and management, information management, oversight of contracts through closing, customer and vendor relations, bookkeeping, leading administrative department members as appropriate based on your organizational structure. We're going to talk about organizational structure in next week's call, where we're going to show you why it's important to have an organizational chart and what that looks like. Now, what are the key skills and behavioral traits, attitudes, and skills required for a director of operations? They have to have strong written and verbal communication skills. They have to have exceptional organizational skills and project management abilities. They have to have financial management skills. They have to have great ability to focus. They have to be concerned about doing things the right way. They have to be calm under pressure, learning-based, service-based attitude, proven ability to succeed, growth-focused. Sounds like a diamond in a rough. This person is the unicorn of the real estate business and the expansion empire. They are the unicorn. Do you have your unicorn? Next, people and contacts. Who are they going to interact with? Who are their contacts going to be? The expansion agents, the expansion business owners, the administrative department, and then also your buyers, sellers, and vendors. So now that we've talked about the job description and we've talked about those key skills, what I want to go into next are the behavioral traits of the director of operations. So if you go to page 8, what we've done is page 8 through page, let's see, 13, we have given you an ideal KPA for a director of operations. This person was a 100% match on the KPA for a director of operations. Now, some of you are saying, well, mine was run as an executive assistant. If you were hired before the KPA came out or in the early years of the KPA, you can go back and have your MCA or director of agent services, whoever in your market center is in charge of the KPAs, have them rerun your job fit report as a director of operations. And that this is what you will see, this report that we're going over right now.
Yeah, they don't have to take it over. They just rerun it, right, Brinley?
Exactly. You do not have to retake it. Actually, you don't want to retake it unless you were distracted during the assessment. You just want to make sure that you have them run it for the job fit. And then on page 8, those 11 traits that we're seeing, it will rerun those traits for the match of the director of operations. So a couple things I just want to point out here. Guys, rapid problem solving again. We talked about that on the listing management, and we talked about that on the TC. I'm a firm believer, I've seen it show up, that if you're building a big operations team that is going to have to be the nucleus of a massive operation, they all have to have rapid problem solving skills. They have to be able to move quickly from one problem to the next. You'll notice that their assertiveness is midline. So they can become assertive if they need to be, or they can retreat if they need to. So it's not as high as a mega agent's assertiveness. So they're not going to butt heads necessarily with their agent. they will be able to be neutral and flex either way they need to. That's a really important one to pay attention to, because we need a director of operations that isn't afraid to be assertive, yet also knows the proper time to retreat with a highly assertive individual, which is what most megas are. Logical problem solving. This is a little bit higher, yet that's not really, it's a medium match job fit. So we're not too concerned about that being a little bit off base. You do want them to have a high level of logical problem solving. You'll also notice that this person has a high level of structure. This would be similar to a Gary Keller KPA, which would be a DC in our DISC terms, which Monica's going to talk about here in a minute. And that's where we see that structure. This person has a high level of structure, is able to work within the confines of high structure because of the systems. They are systems brained. They are a systems brained person with the ability to be assertive. Their adaptability and their optimism, if you notice, are in the midline. Again, they have to be able to flex either way. They have to be able to be adaptable, to roll with the flow, go with the punches, deal with agents that are coming and going and having a million things thrown at them. And then they have to have enough optimism to think far enough ahead in the future, yet not so much that they're not able to put on their black hat and poke holes and confront things. So really, again, like those 11 traits on the front, the gray bars are where we have seen the most successful directors of operations in our company fall on the KPA. You'll notice a few of them are off on this director of operations. If you have one that is all green that you scored inside the bars on all of them, please email it to me, brinley@kw.com. I would love to see it. This is what we were able to show you guys, which is also a 100% match on the job match. So again, just like in our first two roles, I challenge you, pull your KPAs, rerun them as the director of operations, look at your 11 traits, go through your descriptive review. The descriptive review is on page 13. This is what's going to tie all of this together for you. So this is really where it's going to talk about a director of operations. And real quick, just to point out a couple things.
Page 12.
No, it's on page 13. Yeah. It's page 13 is the descriptive review of the packet.
Okay.
Couple things to point out. They have the capacity to work with multiple activities if they have a clear idea of what is expected and they have well-defined procedures. Here's where they are aggressive in their attitudes and their ways of thinking. They have a take charge tendency, best in solving problems that require analysis. Go through this and see these major traits, especially if you're an agent on the phone that hasn't hired this role yet, so that you know exactly what you're looking for. So Monica, you want to take them into the DISC?
Yeah, page 14 then on the DISC.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. So on this particular one, when you look at the high D at a 99, this is the perfect profile for a director of operations. If you don't have a D and you're a director of operations, then you build that up with versatility. Gary Keller's two top executive assistants that have been with him forever are all Ds. He said he can only have a D as an assistant. And if you notice, the next larger number is a C, so that's detailed and organized. A D is a person who, drives through the business, gets it done, sees how to just narrow in and be super efficient. And yet that C part is so critical too, because that's crossing the T's and dotting the I's. So Gary Keller, everyone, is a DC. He is a 99, I believe, D, or off the charts D probably. And his C is right there too. It's in the 90s also. So he's a DC. So that is a really great director of operations. Now the S, and looking back at the compatibility and looking back at what Brinley went through on job fit, that part has to be developed, because as far as versatility, because you are in charge of people, you do need to be a little friendly, and you got to know everybody's profile and what they're expecting. So when you look at that as an S as a 10, this is a very introverted person who doesn't want to engage with anyone. And yet they have to learn to adapt to be more versatile in that, and to be a little bit more friendly, put a smile on their face, and not always be in such a hurry, because the D has a tendency to move very fast and appear rude when all they're doing is just being extremely efficient sometimes. And sometimes they are rude. Okay, so Brinley, take the 30, 60, 90. Let's walk through that with everybody.
So thank you so much, Monica. And so when we, and I want to just add on to what Monica says, we really want to start moving away from the DISC and moving more into the KPA and mastering those 11 traits so that you can look at a KPA and look at those traits and know exactly how that individual is going to show up in a role, especially when it comes to the administrative staff. And I just use this as an example. I had someone come to me yesterday. They've had this person in the role for 3 months. They've completed their 30, 60, 90 and started telling me the challenges that they've had. And I pulled up, and this is a first-time EA, and I pulled up the KPA, and this person had no adaptability and no structure. So it was not the right fit. Did it make that individual person wrong? No. Yet everything that this agent had seen in those 3 months was built around this person having low structure and having low adaptability. So just keep that in mind as you go through your hiring process. By the way, I have low structure and low adaptability, and that's why I'm not a good EA. I'm a good director of operations. So the next shocking. The next thing that we want to talk about is the 30, 60, 90-day plan. So the 30, 60, 90 days for a director of operations, guys, this is going to sound intense because it should be. This person is the right hand to the business owner. They are the ones that are running 50% of this business. So if they're not able to perform under pressure, when the pressure cooker's turned up, then we don't want to be in business with them. Remember, we're looking for a unicorn. There's a big difference, and Monica will agree, there's a big difference between the way an EA thinks and the way a director of operations thinks. It is two very, very different things. So keep in mind, are they thinking like an EA or are they thinking like a DOO? So the first 30 days, we're going to make sure that our operations manual and our SOPs are completed. SOPs are your standard operating procedures, maybe called playbooks, maybe called ops manual, maybe called your SOPs. I don't understand this part, why this is always the one thing that is put to the end, because how can you run your team if you don't know how your team runs? And how can you ever go on vacation and feel peace in your mind if you don't have everything documented? Also, you're going to identify and streamline the current budget resources to support the business's budget model. This isn't saying that you're going to have 100% complete ownership of this. What you're going to start to do is to create it, reduce it, and track it in order to keep everyone at 30% of GCI. You're going to implement a system for 100% expense approval. I can't tell you how many teams I get into and they have no expense approval process. We're going to develop the 40-30-30 base budgets for the hub, the expansion businesses, and the overall empire. So making sure that there are budgets for every expansion business, if you have expansion, or for the hub. You're going to implement a communication system to handle customer inquiries and agent hub requests. You're going to implement all systems for 90% accuracy. You're going to implement, and manage all systems for listing and transaction management. They're going to learn and evaluate all the MREA models. They're going to develop a 135 for the operations department. We're going to start weekly cash talks and 411s with this individual right out of the gate. So this 30, 60, 90 would then convert into a 411. So their 30-day goals would be their monthly goals on their 411, and then they would break it down into what they need to do each week. This puts a default setting in the accountability process. If you have them put their 30-day goals into a 411, then at the end of their 30 days, you're automatically checking up with them, and you already know whether they completed them or not, and whether we're staying in business or if we're moving on. Because remember, as career visioning tells us, and 30, 60, 90 tells us, there's no yellow light. It's red or green. We either stay in business or we don't. They're going to read MREA in their first 30 days. It's totally doable. And they're going to attend the following classes: 6 personal perspectives, business by the book, and agent financials. Now, I know one of you is going to ask, what if we don't have those classes in the first 30 days? This is meant to be customized. We are just giving you a template. Customize this to your team, yet don't compromise the strength of it. Make sure that you keep it this highly accountable and results driven. 60 days, we're going to make sure that ops manual is 100% complete. We're going to have 95% of our new agent launch recruiting and onboarding process complete. We're going to create and implement an expansion business launch or net promoter score. This is also known as surveys. You're going to build a bench 3 deep of potential team members for operations, build a bench 3 deep of potential team members for sales. You're going to build and implement a review and referral program to generate reviews and referrals from 50% or more of our current transactions, 50% or more of our SOI, and 50% or more of our past clients. You're going to maintain expenses at 30%. And now we're going to go into start owning those things that you implemented in the first 30 days. You're going to own the expense tool. You're going to own the budget. You're going to own the communication. You're going to own the systems. You're going to own models. You're going to start owning CGI to track the CGI numbers. At this point, they're starting to host their weekly operational team members, and they're starting to hold the team members accountable to their 411. So they've had a month of doing a 411 with their mega. Now they're going to start doing their 411s with their operations team in the next 60 days. They're going to read the one thing, and they're going to attend career visioning 30, 60, 90 and 24 topics of MREN. Their final 90 days, they're going to have 100% of the new agent launch recruiting onboarding process completed. They're going to own the expansion business, launch Net Promoter Score, which is our survey or our customer experience or the promise. They're going to launch a new expansion business with a Net Promoter Score of 8 or better, again, gathered through surveys. The Net Promoter Score, guys, is from the customer experience, so keep that in mind. And if you want that taught in your area, we can come and teach it. Just let us know. Launch new expansion business with a Net Promoter Score. Maintain a bench of 3 deep for operations and sales. So you build the bench in the 60 days, you maintain it in the 90. We're going to continue to generate referrals and reviews from current transactions, from our sphere of influence and past clients. We're going to cut expenses by 10%. We're going to maintain the budgets. We're going to have 100% of monthly reporting done. We're going to begin to leverage our 80%, and we're going to read shift. They're also going to attend Train the Presenter and ESO. That was a lot.
Okay,
and
I heard stuff I hadn't remembered hearing, so I'm sure some of you are going, wow.
Wow,
okay, so
exactly.
this was a lot, but it was a job description. It's the profile. That's a 30, 60, 90. And then in the next few calls, we're going to go through how to put these different things in place. So it's a lot. It's a lot to look at that. So we gave you the foundational pieces to be looking at. And like I said, in the profile and what Brinley's gone over in the 30, 60, 90, these are all measurable things. It doesn't mean this gets done in, all of that doesn't get done in 30 days. And sometimes it's okay that 60-day trickles into the 90 and the 90 is extended a little bit because it's called real estate and people. You know, if you have a tremendous growth in business and lots of transactions, it's all hands on deck. So there's things that happen. So just breathe is what I want to say. Breathe. That's a lot. I got listening to you going, man, that's a lot.
and guys, it is a lot because these are the businesses that we're building. These are a director of operations at this level now has a transaction coordinator, listing coordinator. You're doing 350 more deals a year. You better be able to complete this in 30, 60, 90 days. Otherwise, you're not going to survive in the role. And I said this to someone recently, and they said, there's no way that's impossible. And I said, what if it was possible? What would that look like? And he said, I would have the right talent. So sometimes we don't push them hard enough. We don't stretch them hard enough. And Kristen Cole and I both highly agree on this. You put them in the fire the first 90 days because that's where you're going to see if they can sink or swim. And if they can't swim, they're not going to be able to help you grow to the next level. They're not going to be able to run your operations team to take you to the next level.
Yeah, and then there's always the first 30 days. If they're not raising their hand and asking questions and really working through this, or there's a high level of frustration and things getting buried, then even in 30 days you can know. But 90 days is a good, but sometimes it's 30 days. Don't you agree, Brinley?
I would definitely agree. And I will say, the only reason that they should not complete their 30-day goals within 30 days is because the mega is not giving them the systems, models, and tools that they need to get the task completed.
Well,
so
then there lies the problem. Yeah, that's the problem there.
Because a lot of times, yes, what will happen, especially with budgets, you can't expect a director of operations to come in and write a P&L for you right off the bat. They don't know your business. So if they can't get a P&L from the mega or get the mega to commit to a P&L, which we love our megas, and it's a difficult thing to wrap our heads around as business owners, then they're not going to be able to develop the budget. So we can't hold them accountable to that if we're the reason that they can't complete the task. So you've got to be ready when you're hiring this individual to have your ducks in a row. Because as leaders, and we're going to learn this when we talk about leadership, it's our job as leaders to provide the systems, models, and tools that they need to complete the task and to perform well on the job and set them up for success. When you agree,
guys,
Monica?
so I totally agree. So let's look at some contributions now. So put your question in the chat box, raise your hand. We'd love to talk to you online also. So love to hear what some of your ahas are, and then we'll go through some of the suggested homework assignments. So what you guys learned today?
So Maria Hansen's asking, how do you differentiate between a DOO and a Director of Administration? It's a title. It really isn't important what the title is. Wouldn't you agree, Monica?
Yeah, and then when you say Director of Administration, well, then that's just admin. Director of Operations is admin, buyer, agent. You're running the whole ship. You're running everything.
Yeah.
But
and they might
I don't see Director of Admin anymore. It's kind of gone.
Yeah, we don't really look at that. I don't hear that term much anymore. Typically, guys, what happens is when you have your first Director of Operations, that person is wearing two hats. They're the Director of Operations, and they're really wearing the Director of Sales hat. So they're running all the operations, and they're holding agents accountable and recruiting for agents or career visioning for agents also. Then when it gets to be too much where they can't get to their 20%, then we divide those two roles and we hire a Director of Sales. So now you've got somebody running sales and somebody running Director of Operations, running the operations. Okay, here's the $1 million question. We get it every time, Monica. What can a Director of Operations expect their salary to be? I always like
so we're going to take the political correct thing to say. Every market is different, okay? So the salary will be higher than a TC. The salary will be higher than a listing manager. If you're in Mississippi, it's not going to be the same as San Diego or New York City. So we're not able to discuss those things because we can't be quoted on those things. So sorry, just what's the going rate in your town? It all goes back to a lot of things too. It goes back to the production of your team. It goes back to your cost of living. It goes back to your average commission. So it's a difficult thing to answer, but it is higher than those two salaries as a rule, right, Brinley?
Absolutely. And this is going to go to Maria's point, who just asked about the DOO and the DOA. They actually have a Director of Operations and Director of Admin. So this kind of goes hand in hand with the question about compensation. Guys, what's amazing is that we don't all have to do it the same. And even if you look at all of the top expansion business owners in our company, none of them do it the same. The Lokins don't do it the same as the Kenny, and the Kenny doesn't do it the same as the Hergenrother, and the Hergenrother doesn't do it the same as the Heil. They all follow the basic model, and then they build upon it based on their needs, based on their market, based on the life and the organism of their business. So when it comes to salary, we can't give you an exact amount because I don't know what is expected of your Director of Operations. What are you expecting that role to look like? Some people, we do a flat salary. Some people, it's a base plus it's a commission based on recruiting. They're bonused on the amount of agents because they have that Director of Sales piece. So they're paid on the production side. Some of them are paid base plus bonus. I will tell you that your Director of Operations is not getting paid the same as your first assistant. I will say that. So if you're trying to hire a Director of Operations for the same price that you hired your first assistant for, you're going to waste a lot of money. And that goes, Maria, to you as well. Girl, you do you. If a Director of Operations and a Director of Admin is working for you, then it isn't about the title. It's about defining those job roles. Look at their strengths. What are they both really good at? And then divvy up the admin ops roles, job profiles between the two of them. And if you want help with that, you can email me at brinley@kw.com, and I'll be happy to help. Monica, anything else on that before I go to the next one?
No, go to the next one. I'm good.
All right. I am completely terrified of this position. I suspect I will eventually start working towards being a DOO, but I feel overwhelmed by everything that must be done. Will I have to create all of these things on my own? I'm afraid I'll end up creating everything from scratch without help, and that's scary.
Oh, no, you're on this call. So first of all, number one, there's a lot of that job description that is leveraged, because remember, we're about leveraging these things. So you're overseeing some of these things that you've leveraged out, yet you're the keeper of the final information. So, my thought process on that is just breathe, learn the job you're in now, and you start building on it ultimately. And like I said, this is a daunting list that we gave you, and it's not meant to scare you. It's not meant to be a wish list, but this is when you're running a big operation. And if you're going to be doing 300 plus transactions, like Brinley said, you're doing all these things, and you don't go from doing 100 transactions to 400 transactions and know how to do this job. Everything is a gradual step, right, Brinley?
Absolutely. And I just want to add, so when we go through this, then this will probably give you some peace of mind. Because I think what might be happening is we're looking at this job description and thinking we have to do all of this. No, remember, you're a director. What does a director look like? A director is not a doer. Your operations manual, your TC is going to do the transaction side of it. Your listing manager is going to do the listing management side of it. Your agent, buyer's agents are going to put the buyer's agent side of it together. You're just directing the project and making sure that it gets done. The budget at this level, if your financial accounting is still done in-house, have your mega call me. You should be working. Right. Yeah, you should be actually working with an accountant, a bookkeeper, one of the accounting businesses that runs KWR, MREA models. Like, you're the director of that relationship. So you're making sure that the expenses get coded and get sent to them. You're making sure that they generate the P&L. You make sure that they're taking out the salaries. You're using a payroll company. So you're making sure that if it's ADP, that ADP runs payroll every 2 weeks. Again, you're directing it. You're not doing it. So don't allow your limiting belief to come in that there's no way all of this can be done. You're right. One person could not do all of this. That's why you're the director of operations. You're not the executive assistant. The executive assistant does everything. The director of operations directs the team that does everything. Big difference. And we're slinging the word around and the title around in our company, like, I'm an agent, I have one buyer's agent, and my EA is now the director of operations, or I want to hire a director of operations. We don't have any operations to direct.
I know. It's just like I got that call, like I said, it was like, okay, I'm doing less than 75 transaction, this person said, and I'm hiring a director of operations. Like Brinley keeps saying, and I love that, you've got to have operations to direct.
Yeah.
75 is not enough to have a director of operations. Stop it.
Sounds fancy.
Quit throwing that title around.
Yeah, it sounds fancy, yet it really gives you a limiting vision of where you're at and what this person really looks like. So that's why we wanted to do this course, guys, was to take you through 6 weeks of what this role actually is supposed to look like. Not what everyone says that they think it is based on the business. Based on Gary Keller's model, level 5 of the 7 levels, when we're ready to go into expansion, we're bringing this person in to start to run the operations team, or the hub, so to speak, to be able to build towards expansion. So be real careful with that. Continue to put your questions in the chat box. We've still got about 13 minutes, guys. You've got Monica and I here to fire off away. Monica, Lauren Ripien, I'm going to let you take this because I know you love this topic. What about licensed versus unlicensed? Active license, is that a benefit?
Okay, so when you're playing at a high level, you have to be licensed, absolutely. And even if you're playing at a low level, I wouldn't hire any assistant that wasn't willing to get licensed. I hire talent first, they get licensed. The director of operations absolutely has to be licensed. If they need to jump in with a client on a transaction, they should not be talking about a contract, a transaction, price reduction, negotiation, no money discussions if they're not licensed. That is against the law, okay? You have to be a licensed real estate agent. So we are going to go through all the pros and cons coming up on a call. But Brinley and I are both the same about this. Please get licensed, and especially a director of operations, you must be licensed. You cannot be a director of operations and not be licensed in my world. There's too much liability out there. You slip up once, there's always one agent that's going to look to throw you under the bus. And if you're doing a lot of business, there's a lot of agents looking for you to slip up. So be very careful.
Here's the deal, guys. The director of operations is there so the mega doesn't get the job back. If you're not licensed, at some point, the mega is going to get the listing manager's job back. They're going to get the TC manager's job back. The director of operations is that arm length between the agents and the ops team. So if they're not licensed, they're not able to have the conversations they need to have with the clients to keep the production team in production. If they're not licensed, then the production team keeps getting pulled back into transactions, back into listings. So I'm 110% with Monica. If you're hiring from outside the industry, which a lot of us are doing, some of the best director of operations in our company are from outside industries, within the first 90 days, they have to be licensed. And I would recommend that you pay for that and that they reimburse you if they don't stay longer than a year. So just some ways to handle that, and we'll talk more about that in the course when we talk about licensed versus unlicensed. A question that I got before somebody asked me to cover on the call was, and Monica, I'm going to let you run with this first. When do we know we're ready for a director of operations? Like, when do we truly know that we need to start looking for that person?
So you're the agent asking the question, when do you know you're ready? Well, you're ready when you've got a listing manager and you've got a great TC and you need to onboard more admin, or you need to have someone help you with onboarding the buyer agents. So it's in the growth, and so Brinley and I've talked about this, and so to me it's looking at 150 plus transactions, and according to Gary in the MREA book and what Brinley and I believe too, so at 150 transactions, in order to have excellent over-the-top customer experience with all the things that we need to do with that client and with our systems, you should have 3 full-time assistants. And so when you look at your org chart, you don't want to have any more than 3 or 4 people reporting to you. So let's say you have 3 assistants and you have 4 buyer agents or whatever, and you have an ISA and they're all reporting to you. This is not an org chart. This is just a mess. So the answer goes back to it's based on production and based on where you're growing to the next level. What would you add to that, Brinley?
So a couple things that I want to say. I think one of the most important things that we need to talk about when we talk about here is that your first hire, your EA hire, your diamond in the rough may not be your director of operations. They may not be. They could be the same profile, but they may not be. So if we talk about the ones that are not, let's start with the ones that maybe they don't have that high assertiveness that we talk about that we need when it comes to the director of operations. The minute that you hire a transaction coordinator, that's a pivotal moment to start deciding what the organizational chart of your operations team is going to look like. Ideally, your first hire will go on to be that lead admin and go on to be that director of operations as outlined in the MREA models. Yet if it's not, you need to start coaching them to either becoming that person or finding their next seat on the bus. So I've seen it done a few ways. Your first hire may be amazing at transactions, so you don't hire a transaction coordinator. You go ahead and you turn them into the transaction coordinator, and you hire your lead admin, that person that's going to fit that director of operations profile. You might do it that early. Or you may hire the TC and then decide, okay, once we're ready for that next hire, which is the listing manager, now we're going to move the EA into listings, and now we're going to hire the director of operations, okay, which that comes in at level 4. And we're going to show you again next week. So really, there's a few ways that you can move the puzzle pieces around with your ops team based on that first hire. There's always a place for the first hire, whether it's a listing manager, whether it's a TC, whether it's the director of operations, or if the mega wants an EA, you might still keep your EA and solely work for the mega, not for the team. So just a couple options I wanted to point out there.
Yeah, and you know what I always think about too, if you're a listing manager and you are really happy with that process and you like that process and you just want to own that process, it doesn't mean that you have to grow out of that job. If you are a TC and you're all drilled into that and that's your wheelhouse, you love that, that's where you need to stay. So it goes back to a conversation with a mega agent saying to the listing manager, the TC, do you have any plans for growing on the bench here? Do you see yourself doing anything else? They've got to want to grow into those positions. You can't make somebody do that and be happy with that job. Somebody's got to be raising their hand, I want more, I want more, I want more. That's got to happen. They got to have the shiny eyes. They want it.
Yeah. So we have 2 more questions. The first one, does every director of operations have to have proven experience or track record on sales to be effective? Or does a high SI disc profile, could they be successful as a director of operations too? Guys, behavior is only 25%. When we talk about behavior, what we say is that this is the ideal profile. People's behavior can change at certain times. Their adaptive behavior can change. They can be coached into certain situations. They can be coached and led towards their gaps. So I'm not going to say that an SI could not be a successful director of operations, although the majority of successful directors of operations are highly assertive, highly structured individuals. Does that make sense? Monica, you have anything there?
Well, yeah, when I see an SI, I see them as great salespeople, and to develop them into a director of operations, I just always go back to Gary Keller's model and the fact that his 2 DOs are 2 of his top people that he relies on and has relied on for years are high Ds. There's always the versatility. There's always the adaptability that Brinley talks about, and versatility. You can develop that. However, I'm not sure sometimes. I've not seen it too often. It's like Brinley says, a diamond in the rough on that one.
I don't ever say never, and the majority, like I said, are highly assertive, highly structured. Someone's asking how you measure 90% accuracy for building, implementing, and managing all systems. It's a percentage. So if there's 7 systems and 5 of them, or I'm sorry, let's go easy math for Brinley's brain's sake. If there's 6 systems and 3 of them keep breaking, then you're only at a 50% accuracy of your systems. We go with percentages because this is a template. When you build this and customize it to yourself, you can put specificity into it, so you can say your specific systems and what you want the ROI to be on it. So for instance, if you have if you're using Let's Talk Command and you have everybody on a 36 touch, you can actually make that build out 36 touch for 1,600 people in the database to receive 36 touches throughout the year. So just depending on the system, we've kind of used like generic percentages, yet when you customize this, you want to get real specific. Remember, it has to be SMART goals: specific, measurable, action-driven, realistic, and timely. And so that's what we use the percentages for, is to make it measurable in kind of this generic world. But you can, Jennifer, it's much easier to get more specific when you start customizing it.
Good job.
Anything
else, Brinley?
I don't have anything else today, except that I'm super excited about the next 6 weeks. This is my, if you can't tell, like, this is my passion zone, so I'm excited.
I know, it's all about Brinley. No, I was just kidding, but here's the good news. Yeah, right. Okay, so here's the fun thing. Today was a rough call because there's a lot, and it's kind of like, I'd like a drink of water, and Brinley and I took the fire hose, jammed it down your throat, and turned it on at full speed.
Yep.
The other calls are going to be a little bit more where you go, okay, rather than, oh my gosh. But this is the ideal situation. So we wanted to give that to you. That's the foundational piece. And now we start breaking these things out so you can easily see how this can be done. Easily and magically, as they say. Right, Brinley?
Absolutely. And, you know, I'm gonna throw this there because a lot of you are hearing me say this lately, that, you know, this is a big role. And we have to be willing to show up as directors. And what does a director look like? We are no longer an EA. We are no longer a TC. We are a director running a multi-million-dollar business. So yes, fire hose. And how do you want to show up as a director? What do you want your director to look like? And if you think that all of this is too much, my question as a coach would be, are you thinking big enough? Are you thinking big enough? And if you want to meet someone that fits this and that is this unicorn, just reach out to me. And we're going to introduce you to one on call 18. We're going to end our entire program with one of the most powerful director of operations in our company. So homework, you want to share the homework with them, Monica, for next week? Oh, Monica? All right.
Yeah, I'm here. Okay, sorry. I got on mute by accident. Okay, so here's what I want to share with you. So number one on the homework assignment is, I think that you take the 30, 60, 90 if you're a director of operations, and you look at that first 30 days, and you look at, am I up to speed on all of these things? So if you're a director of operations on this call, and I know we have a bunch, look at the first 30 days, okay? Then what would number 2 be, Brinley?
So you're going to create, and we've put it up on the screen, pick at least one of these items to create. You're going to create an 80-20. Remember the 80-20 exercise that we've gone over multiple times in our calls. What is your top 20% for your role? So Maria, who asked about the DOO and the DOA, this would be a great exercise for you. Identify the 20% and the 80% for each role. Create your job description, your customized job description for your director of operations. Rewrite your job description or create a job description for your future director of operations, and create a 30, 60, 90 for the director of operations. So take our template, customize it, cut it back. And if you're on this call and you have a headache, we have you right where we want you before we go into the next 5 weeks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
We're going to revolutionize the admin operations side of the real estate business. So it's going to be good. I think Monica's head is even spinning at this point, isn't it, Monica?
Yeah, well, I looked at all that. That's a lot. Like I said, I'm sorry we put the fire hose down your throat today, but we had to build a foundation, and now we go from there and we start to break it out. So awesome. Thank you, everyone. We really appreciate your time. We appreciate the financial commitment from your team. We look forward to talking to you next week. Stay tuned. It's going to be fun.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Join Monica and I on Facebook for our Leverage Live that we'll be doing every week. Follow us on Facebook. You won't know when it's coming, but it'll be powerful. So have a great week, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.